This is the image we're going to be creating in today's video, and it's a step-by-step tutorial today. And as it's about 20 minutes long, I thought we would just dive right in. Okay, this is the image here. This is an old image. This is from 2018, 2019, around that time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through this entire edit for you. So if you've got the patience to wait to the end, brilliant and well done. Let's just dive straight into this though. And as you can see straight away, we have some lens spots. So let's look and see how it deals with the lens spots. Let's get into erase and let's remove dust spots. And as you notice, it's taken good care of them. So I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on. I'm not going to be working in a linear fashion. I try and build up an image going by the effects that's applied. I know what I want to see in the final outcome of this. So I'm going to head straight for that. So I'm going to jump into the develop module and I'm going to pull the exposure down a bit. And I'm going to lift the shadows just in around here. So now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back and forward through everything. And for me, the first thing I am going to do is go into face AI. And I'm going to light the face. Remembering that each time these reset, every time you close the panel back down, the tool resets and you can add more and more each time. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a bit more there. And then I'm going to get into the eyes. And I'm going to add iris flare. And now I don't know if it'll show up in this image, but let's just push it anyway. Let's go for that. I don't know if I saw any difference there, to be totally honest. Eye whitening, tiny bit. I want you to be drawn to the face on this image. Eye enhancer, yes, I'm going to do that as well. Remove dark circles. Well, there's hardly any there, but why not? Let's just balance the image as best we can. And there we go. That'll do that for that. Let's go into the skin and let's just soften some of the skin slightly. Perhaps a little bit too much, but because I want a glow on this image, I don't mind that. Remember that each time you close the panel down, it resets so that you can apply it again at different variations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in to structure and I'm going to push the structure slightly, and it's going to look a bit too much at the moment, but you'll see why I'm doing it. I'm also going to paint it in with a mask. Right, the size of the brush is here, but I also control my brush with the square brackets in the keyboard. So what I'm going to do, the strength I'm quite happy with, so I'm going to paint in there for this, just to emphasize everything that's here. Down the hair, down there. And again, as usual, I'm being quite liberal with this. So I'm just going in there just to pick out those wee bits. And then I'm going to just take it across there once, because that's another highlighted area. I'll take the size down using the square brackets in the keyboard. And then I'm going to take the size down again and I'm going to re-emphasize the eyes. But this time I'm using structure to do it. So I'm just going to go in there and paint that. And paint that, remembering that we've already emphasised the eyes. The lips as well for this one. Let's just do that. So already we can see we have that to there. We now have more control over the entire image. Okay, from structure, I'm going to get into Relight AI. So I now have the brightness near and the brightness far. And what I actually want to do is I want to darken down the brightness in the distance. So I'm just going to take that down a tiny bit. Not too much there. Just to around about there, because of what I'm planning to do with the image overall. So the brightness near, I'm going to pull that just to around about there. Now, I'm not bothered what's happening down here, to be honest, and you'll see why with this in a second. But you notice everything that's going on there? Let's take that back a bit. That's just too much. And let's just take that to there. So we're going to zero that and we're going to take the brightness back. Yeah, that's dealt with that. So if I push the brightness near, it's going to affect that, as you will see. So there you go. So if I take it down that way, it's not going to make much of a difference except to the bottom of the image. And let's see what that's doing. Yep, it's interfering with that again. So I'm going to leave it like that, and I can deal with that within this image. Close down Relight AI. Jumping back into Face AI, I'm going to light the face again. And I'm going to push this quite a bit to around about 39. 39 is looking good for me, and it's allowing me to make the face stand out even more with this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to develop, and I'm going to work with the shadows. And this time I'm going to push the shadows, and this is a global edit for the shadows, but I'm mainly watching the shadows under the neck. Quite happy with 30. This time I am going to paint them in, but this time I'm going to take the strength down so that it doesn't affect the image too much. And I'm just painting this in via a mask. So I'm just going to paint in there, just slightly, perhaps just in there. Take it down the face there, and I'll take the size down a tiny bit and paint round the eyes. Paint in down the hair there and there. Yeah, that's looking fine. So I'm going to turn that back off. Do I need to do anything to it at the moment? No. Again, quite happy with how everything's beginning to turn out. But now I want to create a gradient in it. I want a gradient to come up through the bottom, and that's why I was saying I'm not too bothered about what's going on down here with this edit. That's just bad photography. That's nothing else to blame for that. So let's go into develop. This time I'm going to pull the shadows down a wee bit. So I'm doing the opposite of what I've already done, and then I'm going to pull the exposure down to around about there. But I only want a part of this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, and it says paint mask, and that is the only option you have, is paint mask. So we're going to have to use that as a gradient and work with it. So I'm going to increase the brush size. Now remember, the bigger the brush, the nicer the feather on your image. So my strength is down, so I'm going to take the strength down to halfway, and I'm going to start in the image, and I'm going to paint through there, dropping down there slightly, and then paint back up. And I'm going to let it go in a second, but I'm still painting through like that. So you see that slight gradient there, and it is a very, very slight gradient. Now, because that is so slight, what I can do now is I can take this a tiny bit higher, just into about there and into about there, knowing that I can now, for my next paint, the strength I can take down. So if I go in here and push the strength further and paint in here, that should darken that area down for me, and it is. So we're creating our own gradient here. Now I have to watch that I don't create too much of a in-your-face gradient with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go develop and close that, and then I'm going to open it back up, and I'm going to bring the exposure down again just to see what happens. Right, that for me is nicer, so I'm going to use that again to paint in, and this is going to be the lower section of the gradient again. So I'm going to take the brush, start a bit here, and just paint in here, dipping down under there, and the reason I'm dipping down under there is so that this area here is highlighted as well as the face. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close develop. This time I'm going to go back into develop and bring back the saturation within the image. So we'll just do that just to around about there. That's actually working nice for me for what I'm about to do to the image. Again, I may go back in and light the face even further. If I go into the right bit, go in here, face AI, and turn the face light up slightly. Perhaps a bit more than that, just to about there. Right. I'm quite happy how it's sitting and how it's looking just now. There's a couple of wee things that probably change, but for the purposes of this video, I'll let you see where we're going to take this next. Next thing is I'm going to add a layer into this. Now, I have some layers loaded in here, as you see, and they're from different images that I've been working on. But I'm going to add a couple of mist layers into this. So you can see that one there, along here and along here. Now that was me testing out different images, and how you actually find them, if you just click the plus button. And for me, this has taken me to my Pro Edu assets, and you can see all the smoke and the wisps of smoke that I have here. I've already got a couple set in there, but if I need to come back in for them, at least I know where to get them now. So I'm just going to click cancel. And the first one I'm going to bring in is this one. And there we have it. Hopefully from this one you can see why I've chosen it. I'm going to zoom it out slightly. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to stretch it down the way. I want this coming up from the bottom of the screen. But as you notice, the light was coming down from the top of the image anyway. So this is going to work well. Opacity I'm going to drop to around about there. And then I'm going to go in probably a screen blend mode as well. And that's worked quite nice for this. Yep. I'm just going to make it a bit bigger so that I can move it around the screen slightly. I'm watching that none of the smoke cuts off here, so I want it to fill my entire screen. I can stretch it over that way a tiny bit. Right. Just to balance it out. So I'm quite happy there as well. But what's happened is the smoke is now going over the model, and I don't want it to be over the model entirely. So if I get into my layer properties and I take the mask option, I can paint in the areas or erase from the areas. Now I prefer painting in, it's like colouring in, so that's what I'm going to do. And I am going to start here and just paint in. And you'll notice the strength I haven't changed. The strength from the last time I used it was at 78, and it still is. So we're getting that effect there, and I know there's quite a bit of smoke up here with quite a bit of detail, so I can paint in there quite comfortably. I can go down here, and if you remember correctly, there was smoke coming across her face because of the layer that we put in, so I'm going to avoid that area. I don't want it in there just as much. I can go out there, smoke coming out there. I can bring some over the front, because there'll be a tiny bit over the front. Yep. And if I take the brush size down, and I'm actually going to drop the strength for this area here, and just paint in there, so that we're building up the image like that. And again, that I'm quite happy with. Right, okay, I'm going to add another layer. And the other layer, let's bring in a different bit of smoke, because I'd like to add some wee accent details in here. So let's go in, and this is the smoke that we have. Let's choose that one. Click open. And that's there. So let's bring this one into the image. And now I can choose where this is going to be. So what I can do if I wanted is I can put it there. And you can see we've got a bit of detail there. So I could actually put that there, ensuring that each time I do this, that I don't have any edges. And by edges, I mean these edges here where smoke's maybe going to stop and it's not going to look right. So I'm going to leave that one there just now. Again, opacity, I'm going to drop right back for this. Just to about there. Yep, that looks okay. And I'm going to go for a screen blend with this one as well. So you can see how the image is building up. Now that I've done that, I can choose whether I overlay it there or I flip it that way and overlay it there and then rotate it. And for me, it's probably going to work better on this side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade some of this out. So I'm going to leave that at that. Click Layer Properties, go back in, take the mask, and I'm going to take the strength right down so that I've got control in how I paint this in. So I'm just going to, I can see that it's there just now, so I'm just going to paint this in there. Just like that. And you can see that it's building up the depth in the smoke. Now the more I paint it, the more it comes in. So I don't want too much coming in down here. And because of that, I'm going to make the brush quite big. And then we get that nice fade in there. But for me, that line coming in there doesn't work as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase that. And if I want to erase it right out totally, I can take the strength up and just paint over there. And that moves it from that. So now perhaps a couple of accents down here will just finish off this image. As you can see, I've added some new layers to this just to try and balance it out. But let's just take it a wee step further and let's look and see what else is in here. So we've got this Stardust bokeh, and let's just go for that one to see what it does. And that adds that in there. Right, if you see that there, that actually works quite well in this area. It helps blend that out. But over in this area, you notice that it's made up of a couple of images with that, so we need to get rid of that. So let's go in and layer properties. Let's paint this in and just paint it in the areas that we want. So we want this side, that's a definite. Like so. That's quite nice there. Yep, it just adds something else to another dimension to the image. Let's add another one, but let's make it the opposite flip and see how that looks coming up from that side. Let's just go for the opposite one. Again, let's add the same layer in and let's flip it horizontally so that we've got it here now. So we get rid of this side. So let's take the opacity down a bit, just to about there. And let's paint that in only here. And let's just do that. Now when we're painting this, we have to make sure we don't catch any of the half in here or beginning in there. Right, so we're building this up. That's actually okay. It's just a fun image to try. So fun effects for this. That one's perhaps a bit too much, or this one's not enough. So let's go into the layer properties of it and just raise it slightly so that we have that effect there. So that's it. I'm going to leave it at that for this. We could put in a couple of light flares if we wanted, with light leaks or the flares here. Let's see all the light leaks. Would any work with this image? Because the light's coming down from the top. Let's see what that one does. Yep, it's okay. And now it's just overcooked. So perhaps that one's not the one that we want. Maybe that is though. And then just stretch it out. And stretch it out there and bring it down. Maybe that's the one we want. Let's try a different colour here. Let's just change the hue of that over towards there, and you'll see it's beginning to pick up more of the greens and that, the yellow towards the greens. And then let's go into the layer properties and just pull it back slightly. Right, it's a bit overcooked at that, but hopefully it lets you see what you can do with your images. I'll just export this. I'll close that first. Luminar Neo, File, Export, Edit for Neo, Finished 2. And format is JPEG. I could go into TIFF, PDF or whatever. I'm just going to keep this as a JPEG, 668 by 480 pixels per inch. Export. hopefully you enjoyed that, and hopefully it lets you see just how you can use Luminar Neo to enhance your portraits, and in this case as well by using layers and also in this case multiple layers. I've been a photographic ambassador for Skylum for a good few years now, and I enjoy that. I'm really glad that they asked me to do that, and one of the things that I do is I create the videos to help people learn how to use the software. I'm sure though you are aware of the atrocities happening in the Ukraine just now, and as a fellow human being, I honestly can't believe it, but it is happening. And one of the ways that we can help is by making a small donation. And so I've put a couple of links below. I've donated myself, but I've put a couple of links below that came through from the Skylum team, who I'm glad to say are safe and well. So if you feel like making a donation to help in the current crisis and help towards the aftermath of all this, the links are down below.